Political derailment threatens to wreck a special session on high-speed rail. Can a deal be made in time? And the Florida Supreme Court grants the governor's request for a statewide grand jury on public corruption. In this special edition of Power Play from Florida's capital, that's our program today with our guests, Josh Haffenbrack of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel and Aaron DeLotte of the Orlando Sentinel. Okay, here we are at the Capitol, lawmakers in session, and already a deal seems to be falling apart on the first days of the special session. How bad is that going to be if they can't work it out?
Well, that's right. Senator Kerry Baker, who's a Republican, is waffling on his support. Some of the Democrats they thought they had in the yes column are waffling. It'd be a terrible political blunder for the governor, for Senate President Jeff Atwater, if they can't come away with something from here.
But in this terrible economy, Aaron, is it too much money at the wrong time, and is something going wrong now where some lawmakers are saying this is not going to play well with the crowds?
Well, it wouldn't be a special session if there wasn't some drama interjected in the middle of it. I mean, there always seems to be an element of uncertain outcome that emerges in the middle of a special session before it magically comes together at the end. What's interesting about this dynamic right now is the political risk that's been taken, because essentially you had a message that you were trying to send to Washington that we're on board for commuter rail, and if this unravels on Jeff Atwater, it sends a completely opposite message.
All right, let's talk about Jeff Atwater and Paula Dockery and Kerry Baker, all of them candidates for statewide office in 2010. How much are 2010 politics messing with this special session?
Well, a lot of these folks have stirred up the hornet's nest for the last few months, talking about stimulus money and how bad it was and how Washington was had money coming out their ears. And now that's coming home to roost to some extent, because a lot of the Tea Party folks, a lot of the anti-tax advocates are screaming about this session and calling the rail bill the biggest government expansion in Florida history. And the
other thing you have to consider as it relates to 2010 politics is they're going to need some South Florida Democrat votes. And a lot of those folks are running for higher office. They're not going to buck the unions.
But Attorney General Bill McCollum supports the rail project, and his new opponent, Paula Dockery, another Republican, opposes it. How much is this opposition of hers to be a different point of view?
Well, it's her whole persona. She's trying to run as sort of a maverick who can take on the establishment and win, and she's done that a couple times on the Senate floor on Sunrail. If she does it again, or if it falls apart, even if it's not directly her doing, it's nothing but a plus for her.
So she could possibly ride it to a nomination as a single-issue candidate?
I don't know about that. She's going to have an uphill race against McCollum.
All right, and let's move on to Kerry Baker. He was mentioned early on in this. He's gone south on his own party on supporting the rail project because he said it's become a big bad wolf instead of Little Red Riding Hood. How much is this about his ag commissioner campaign?
Well, I mean, ironically, he was a co-sponsor of the Sunrail bill 2 years ago.
So does that look a little hypocritical?
Well, he was asked that question, and essentially, the addition of high-speed rail gives him an out. But he is also positioning himself to be a Dockery-like anti-establishment candidate against Adam Putnam, who is a Central Florida guy who is supportive of Sunrail.
And then, the House and the Senate aren't in deep agreement on this to begin with. Can they come to terms?
Well, the House will pass something out. I mean, the House has the votes. They just unanimously passed it out of committee yesterday. Really, the drama's in the Senate, and whether the Senate's going to add in pro-union language that the House does not like, and the House will be forced to decide whether to take that or not.
And besides the political dangers for statewide candidates, the state might be kissing goodbye a couple of $1 billion in federal money?
Absolutely, and that's, I mean, like I said, that's the whole argument that this special session is built upon, that to get that federal money, we have to pass out a commitment to Sunrail and Tri-Rail.
Let's move on to public corruption, all right? Not a good segue, but Governor Christ has had to suspend more than a couple dozen public officials in his 3 years in office, said he's sick and tired of doing that, and asked for a statewide grand jury on public corruption, and now he's getting one.
He is getting one. The Supreme Court, after initially denying it, granted his request, so there'll be a year-long statewide grand jury overseen by Broward Chief Judge Victor Tobin.
And what's that likely to lead to, if anything?
Well, for Christ, it gets him to talk about something other than the fact that he's accepted a lot of campaign contributions from some corrupt folks in South Florida. So, I mean, he gets to come out front to some extent and say, I'm against corruption.
So, too, do many of the 160 lawmakers get contributions. Are they likely to reform a system that still helps them get elected, helps their issues along?
No, they're not going to touch one of the main issues in this whole corruption scandal, which is the money. The money and the special interest money that courses through the system up here.
Okay, in this special edition of Power Play, we'll now go to your respective Power Plays of the week. We'll start with you, Aaron.
I'm going to go with Senate Democratic leader Al Lawson. He gave the opening prayer to christen this session. By supporting Sunrail and D.C., he sent a signal that that Democrats could come on board, and right now he's hedging his bets.
I'm going to go, we talked a little about it earlier, but Senator Paula Dockery, she's sort of built her political reputation on being a train killer, you know, derailing Sunrail twice on the Senate floor, and if she could do it a third time, be a huge boost for her in her gubernatorial bid, which a lot of people consider a long shot, but which she could build some real credibility if she can really bone up that maverick image.
Okay, I'm going to go with the host prerogative and give it to Florida State University coach Bobby Bowden, who announced his retirement and has had a bigger impact on the Florida landscape than most politicians combined. Josh Haffenbrack, Aaron DeLotte, thanks very much. For the latest political news, go to the Safety Review, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.